Yo, how are you doing, folks? Welcome to episode 39 of the Simpa Life Podcast with me, Simpa Carter. I am joined, as always, by Mr. Maka. How are you on this fine evening, sir?
Not too bad, not too bad. Bit fucking grim here today, just absolutely pissing it down. I wonder, is it reflective of the national mood, considering what happened last night?
I want to be careful commenting on that as an Irishman.
Look, it went to penalties. I'm happy.
It was a hell of a show for those that watched it. I must admit.
Game. It was a good game, apart from all the fucking hijinks. Everything around it was absolutely shite. Well, not everything, but the things that marred it, they were disgusting. Let's put it that way. We don't have to talk about it in depth. But the team did well. The manager did well. You know, it is what it is. You can have another try at the next World Cup.
Well, I think, to be fair,
at least you'd be fucking in it. Do you know?
Well, I think exactly that. There should be enough people. I mean, there is. I don't really care for football at all, but there was certainly a collective sense of anticipation of a collective energy that was kind of floating around pre-game. And then actually looking at a lot of the social media footage, exactly what you said, of people breaking into the stadium and whatnot. And there's a pitch invader as well I saw that wasn't on the mainstream.
Yep.
Saw that on somebody's TikTok and somebody tagged me in. So there's quite a lot of sort of the narrative wasn't really shown. And I think that shows the juxtaposition between the reality we're given versus the reality that is there, that we see through all of these proliferal social media accounts and everything else. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it's the grim sense that you're expressing, I think, was probably felt by the vast majority of people this morning, not just those that had a love or an expectation or a hope that we would win the European, was it the Euros? They call it Euros? I don't know what the full name of it is. The Euro Football Championship. Giving myself away a little bit there. But you know what I mean? The point of it is there's collectivism to it. There's a tribalism to it. There's something there that I think we're all a part of, whether we choose to be or not. And that energy now, we have to control its dissipation. Otherwise, it will only be manifested into really destructive things, which is what we're seeing with the racist taunts against the three footballers that missed the penalties. You know what I mean? Social media is exploding with this campaign at the minute of people wanting verified only accounts. So we need to be careful that the expression of hatred, banality, and villainy that comes almost in tandem to the kind of emotional nature of these events, that unless that's channeled, we're going to lose more freedoms. We're going to lose more of our anonymity, our right to be anonymous on the internet, our right to free speech.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's a very fucking heavy intro.
It is.
Hard segue. We're going to turn left here, folks, in a bit of a lighter note. Tonight's guest worked in the hydro industry for 20 years, where he started on the other end of the counter. Since then, he's worked for many well-known brands, including Gavita, Scott's Miracle Grow, Growwell, Botanicare, and Homebox Grow Tents. Currently also helping out with Urban Buddy Grow Lights. He is at the minute a freelance business advisor, and he's in charge of brand relations at the new Paradise Gardens Hydro Show, which looks epic, where you will find ourselves broadcasting live podcasts all weekend. So do check that one out, folks. He's also a volunteer director on the board of trustees at the Wolverhampton Voluntary Sector Council, who helped to maintain and develop a thriving and diverse voluntary and community sector in the region. Here's James Fox. How are you doing, brother?
I'm doing good, thanks, Simpa. Good to see you. Good to see your sofa there, as I can see on the old screen. It's been a while since I've sat on it. I think it was 2018. Correct me if I'm wrong. Summer.
It was indeed. We had many coffees and good chats about the industry and about sort of the state of play. I think quite a lot has changed since then. And I mean, so-called medical cannabis has now been legalized. And
yeah, I think it was just. From memory, I think it was like winter coming into spring, but I came to see you, and then it was the autumn, wasn't it? Was it September 2018? The change, yeah.
It'll be November 2018.
Feels like a different world.
A lot has changed, and a lot still needs to change further. But yeah, we're in interesting times. Definitely in interesting times.
You've got like a proper work setup now.
Yeah, we've got a nice little corner studio. Yeah, did this myself for the people that don't know. That's why you can see all the rough edges. But once you paint it black, it gets hidden. It's cool.
Yeah. Well, thanks very much for inviting me onto your podcast. It's great to see you doing so well and doing writing and podcasting and Yeah.
Things have developed in the past few years, man. Long time since. This was the first time I met you. Was it Spanibus or was it Product Earth? Spanibus, I think, wasn't it?
Spanibus, yeah, I think
the
so.
Gavita stand. I was wandering around capturing images and stuff for I Smoke Media, I believe, at the time. Yeah, we had a good chat. I walked away with a lot of swag that I think I've still got, some of the hemp Gavita t-shirts.
They'd be the limited edition green thumb ones, I think.
Indeed, yeah. I think I've still got a couple of the lights I've got in this cabinet here. One of my drawers, for those that don't know, is full entirely of just promo lighters that I've picked up from around the world.
Yeah, Jai, the owner at the time, he was very insistent on quality and wanted proper hemp.
It's a hell of a bit of material. I mean, it's a real thick, coarse grade. So it's definitely a winter t-shirt than it is a summer one. It's not as breathable as some of the thinner core ones that are produced. But yeah, nevertheless, appreciated it and appreciated meeting you. And I suppose since then you've moved on quite a bit within sort of the industry. But before we get too far with that, my first question, I suppose, would be, how did you get involved in hydroponics and as an industry?
How did I get involved? Well, I was doing something completely different. I used to wear a suit. I used to go to an office every day in a city you probably know called Birmingham. And I worked in something that was really just a job for me. It was I worked in recruitment. I worked in education recruitment, and I was the guy that angry head teachers phoned in the morning when their teachers phoned in sick and they needed a supply teacher. So starting incredibly early in the morning and often on call in the evening. And yeah, it was one of those jobs, you look back and you think, yeah, I earned some good money, but did I really enjoy it? Probably enjoyed the helping people part of it, like helping teachers find, work and a career and find them something, longer term. But getting back to sort of the hydro industry side, is how I got into it was I was helping a friend who was a grower. And back in the sort of late 90s, early 2000s, there wasn't the sort of range of grow shops there is today. I think from memory, there was about 25 shops in the UK. So he didn't have a really good grow shop near him. He was down in South Wales, and he didn't really want to shop at his local shop. And I said, I can get you what you need from a really good grow shop that wasn't too far from me. And I think the orders got bigger and bigger and bigger until they were sort of, full van size orders. And I was still sort of a customer at that point. Used to help my friend out when he needed his tomatoes watering when he went away on holiday. And then I think as the orders got to a really, really, really big size, I think eventually you must sort of get on the radar of the owner of the grow shop. And we started chatting. He was telling me that he was looking to expand his business. At the time, he only had one shop and like a sort of head office for like his mail order side of the business. And when someone just catches you at the right moment, a bit like sort of like almost like how a headhunter would phone somebody and just sort of catch them on a Thursday afternoon when they're a bit pissed off. He just caught me at the right moment and said, probably looking for somebody like you with some recruitment and business skills and customer service skills, because I've kind of employed everybody that I know and everybody that they know, and I don't know anybody else. And generally with a hydro shop, you need, trustworthy people. You need people with a certain amount of knowledge. It's quite hard to find. Like all retail, you can be dealing in quite a lot of cash. So again, trust. And I was offered a job working over at their Warwick head office. That company, actually, I haven't mentioned the name of them, but it's Grow Well. So I went over to work at their Warwick head office at their little multi-channel retail centre, I think you'd call it. back in the days, I think that was before Facebook. Now I sound really old, don't I? So we used to get like orders come through the post, actually handwritten mail order where someone's taken the back of the catalogue out, send you a check or send you some cash, special delivery, or make a payment on card. Yeah, get those orders logged onto the computer, get guys in the back to send them out. Yeah, that's sort of the early days of grow shops on the internet, really. And I think Growwell was sort of there from the start back in 1993, I believe. They were founded. I did some work at like that original location that was a garden centre, which was just off junction 4 the M6. Many of you will know it, who are sort of OG hydro shoppers in the Midlands. Yeah, that's sort of how I got into it, really. And we opened a second store down in London that was Fulham, but I helped to find and fit out and recruit the team for. And then I went from sort of like working in customer services as a manager to becoming like the operations director for the business and helping the owners sort of map out the future and map out where they were going to open shops. Yeah, so that's sort of how I guess it was sort of like stumbled into the industry, really. I didn't sort of go out one day and think, I'm going to work in a grow shop or I'm going to work in the hydro industry. Kind of as somebody once said to me, I think it was Richard Hamilton, who you know, said, "Oh, the hydro industry chose you."
Interesting, actually, from some of the characters that I've met within the industry, that I think is something quite resonant of a lot of people within it. It's such an eclectic mix of, I say this with love, oddball and weirdos. I call myself and class myself as an oddball and weirdo. So,
and I would very proudly put myself in that category as well.
I think you kind of need to be to a certain or lesser degree to kind of acquire the knowledge and the skill set that you spoke of before that makes you highly employable within the industry. Because again, you have to be versatile because it's still quite a cat and mouse game in a lot of ways with what is being played, because obviously the majority of the industry, they sell equipment to grow, as you say, tomatoes. So it's difficult to then find that line between legality, but also provide a good enough customer service that the people who know and want that expertise and that kind of communication with their shop can kind of still get it.
Yeah. And it's, I mean, back then we were meeting people from, you'd recognize, you'd have all different accents, and they were driving, from all over the country to come to this shop because they'd heard about, what great advice they could get and products. And you're meeting all different people from sort of hobby growers to more commercial growers, people who are friendly, lots of questions, people who are difficult, like typical retail, really. You meet all kinds of people in a day. You don't know what's happened to them 5 minutes before or the day before. They might be in a good mood, bad mood, but it's your job to try and help them. And if they come in with a big list of products, make sure, do they need those 20 items? And make sure, if they're not doing it wrong. There's always that classic phrase that sort of sits in my head, where, sorry, you want to do what? And how did you find it out? Or my mate said. Oh, your mate? Okay.
Yeah.
Let me let you into a little secret here, buddy.
Well, that then is the level of service that I think that most people kind of would hope for. Unfortunately, there are, as you said, it started with a handful of businesses back in the early 90s, and a lot of them have been rewarded for sort of first mover advantage, as it were. So Growwell, as you say, and I think they're up to eight or so locations.
They are 8 stores. One thing that two things actually that always stuck in my mind about working there. One was the owner always worked on a Saturday behind the counter. And I believe the original owner still actually does occasionally work in some of the stores, even to date. And also the other thing was this real thing that was drummed into my head about, if a customer comes in with a list of products and you can clearly see that they don't need an item on there, they don't buy it, don't sell it to them, and tell them, you don't need that, buddy.
Well, yeah.
Whereas, I'm not 100% sure that every single retailer does that.
I think, unfortunately, a lot won't, and they'll almost use well, I can't tell them what to do with it, so therefore it's not my business what they do with it. And that traditional kind of upselling model of
this was downselling. This was like, you don't need it.
Yeah, but that's it. But it's you're better off creating brand loyalty and having customers for life. If they then can trust you and can come in week on week.
You'd always get, John that came in with his list. Sorry to everyone called John. But even if he said, you don't need that, buddy, he said, no, I do.
Yeah.
I've read it on the forum.
With some people have got to make their own mistakes. You know what I mean? You can give them advice.
I definitely need 3 types of boost.
Yeah. It's a difficult. Everyone is entitled to make their own mistakes, but it's weird the sources that we trust. So yeah, some people will old school forum or Dave, I've trusted him down the pub for years. He's always got the best stuff, so I'll trust what he's got to say. And we're in this kind of weird time where the hydro industry is almost locked in a stasis. So as medical cannabis progresses and moves forward, only a handful of the traditional players have managed to transition into that market and managing to actually be the nutrient providers, the light providers, being able to actually source this equipment. A lot of the companies, from what I have seen, have sought to vertically integrate, so either acquire or create.
Yeah, and one thing that definitely I just thought of was like how expensive things were back then. Like 20 years ago, you'd be paying north of £200 for a 600 watt magnetic light kit. Yeah, I did say magnetic, not even digital. I mean, now digital kit, what's that? 60 quid, 75 quid, depending on the quality.
I hate the fuckers, but yeah, if you went to Amazon, even fucking cheap, it's just it'll look like it does the job, whether it will, I'm not going to say or not. But yeah, it's created this spectrum of products. So unfortunately, it's got imitators and it's got your budget range all the way right up to your professional kit. And it's kind of it's a postcode lottery as to whether you want to invest in that equipment, because if the cops then find your illegal setup and they smash it, they're going to destroy all of that equipment. Whereas in some place in the country, you can sit quite pretty and you can invest a goddamn lot of money in your equipment, knowing your door is safe.
Yeah, you can get into your really expensive top shelf LEDs. And I think it all depends on, how much you're growing. Do you get on with your neighbor? Are you annoying everybody? Did you tell 20 people down the pub?
Yeah.
Just common sense things, really. I think only in sort of like recent years, we've become, more comfortable in talking about the more exotic beefsteak tomatoes, as in cannabis. Yeah. It's still, you have to be really careful. You can sell all the equipment, but you have to be careful. You can normally spot the kind of people that you wouldn't want to go into a detailed sort of conversation. If someone's asking you a lot of leading questions about a certain plant, you might think that they maybe have another agenda.
Yeah. How often does that happen?
How often does that happen?
Yeah.
A lot.
I was going to say, it's like, isn't that not some sort of a form of entrapment, though?
I guess, yeah. I mean, there was a situation, I think, must be 5 or 6 years ago in the West Midlands. The local constabulary had some undercovers going in grow shops for about 6 months. And some of those grow shop owners didn't actually spot the extremely clean tracksuits, brand new trainers, very short hair, and lack of any gardening knowledge whatsoever. And yeah, unfortunately had a discussion about that plant that they probably shouldn't be talking about. And had their collars felt. But
wow.
I think the days now of I think now we're up to, at one point, I think we're up to like 600 hydroponic grow shops. And the Daily Mail even talking about cannabis almost on a daily basis. So I think the days of, saying it's for tomatoes, Governor, or a little bit over. I think we still sort of sit in a very sort of grey area. It's still quite hazardous and quite difficult to be a retailer in this sector.
Yeah. Sorry, go on.
No, I was just gonna say, because I have an allotment, right? And I'm also absolutely fascinated with renewable energy. You know, potentially if I ever get the opportunity at some point, I'd love to try and live off the grid and stuff like that. So, knowing what I know about beef tomatoes, which is fuck all, that's not really beef tomatoes. I would often sort of not fantasize, but like try and envision a large, self-sufficient, winter-friendly food growing. How am I going to say it? Like contraption, I guess. You know what I mean? A big fuck off thing that runs itself off of solar, hydro, and fucking and stuff like that.
Indoor with hydroponic.
So,
like closed loop and sealed and safe.
But here's the thing. I mean, like, if it's perfectly legal for me to do all of those things, and it is, then how is it such a fucking grey area? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, there's many shops that work with members of the National Vegetable Society, the shops that work with giant vegetable growers, the shops just purely out of their location, like they're near an allotment. You know, the people at the allotment hear about this shop that's got, a wider range of products they might want to use on their allotment. They hear about sort of getting a small tent and some propagators and being able to start their crops off early, in the conservatory under maybe just like really basic, just taking cuttings and putting them under like T5 lights, but just getting like ahead, if that makes sense, when it's like frosty and cold outside and you couldn't be putting in the greenhouse, getting ahead. And there's also like, massive real tomato growers, places like Thanet Earth in Kent that use greenhouses and supplementary lighting and hydroponics, and they're supplying like the likes of Tesco. And we're talking like big numbers of tomatoes all throughout the year, and this is doing immense good, because it means that things aren't traveling hundreds and thousands of miles on a plane.
Exactly.
Growing really well. They're grown here in the UK, self-sufficient, can be grown all year round. In the winter months you're going to have to switch those lights on when it's a little bit more cloudy to make sure we're making a little bit of sunshine. But you can generate electricity using biomass, and there's all different ways that you can make these sort of facilities more environmentally friendly.
There is an idea of a model of making a self-linear system where it captures and sequesters the gases that are created through the process of cultivation to then use in generation of electricity. Obviously, you'd still have to top this up at certain points and create a certain energy. There's no such thing as perpetual energy because of waste and the basic rules of thermodynamics. But the idea is still there of then generating its own sort of system. The other one is people are starting to look at of then using sticks and stems of waste material from cannabis cultivation to create bioethanols to then power the machinery and everything else needed in cultivation. So they are starting to look more towards sort of vertically integrated systems, to use a business term, or just insular systems where they control everything from seed to fork.
Yeah. I mean, hydroponics is used everywhere. There's hydroponic systems on the space station. There's hydroponic systems at the Halley 5 research station, I think it is, in Antarctica. I said that word, Antarctica.
And we'll leave you off with that one.
Yeah. But they're allowed to grow. They need fresh vegetables, salad.
Yeah.
And there's just, I think there's more people as well during sort of the last, how long have we been in this sort of COVID World War III situation? is it 18 months?
months, something like that.
A lot of people have sort of rediscovered or discovered their garden or balcony or whatever scrap of land they can get to grow some things on. I know that a lot of the hydro shops, we're seeing customers both contact them online and coming in person who were completely new to sort of high-tech gardening and hydro and different growing methods. A lot of these customers, you know, they were the kind of people that sort of religiously order off Ocado and posh supermarkets each week, used to getting their orders with no problem. And all of a sudden they can't get the vegetables, they can't get the salad. So I think it sort of made people think a little bit about self-sufficiency and what can I grow.
Definitely. I think, the great toilet roll shortage of 2020 really showed people how logistics work. Then the combination of obviously Brexit and everything else, the fact that we've had a mass exodus of what would be traditional fruit and veg pickers, logistics around phytosanitary certificates on certain foods and seeds and everything else. I mean, and it's going to get very difficult over the next 18 months to 2 years around importation of food. We're starting to recognize this massively. So an incentivization with using high-tech cultivation techniques and the incorporation of hydroponic technology, I think, is the only route we've got to be self-sustainable in terms of food production in this country, because we do not have the youth or the willingness of the citizenry in this country to spend their day toiling in the fields. If we can give them high-tech jobs in warehouses, etc., where then we're not wasting carbon up the wazoo from importation and moving foods around and paying up the fucking wazoo again for importation charges or whatever levies want to be placed by countries as a form of punishment for us leaving the EU. If we can produce all of that at home and not then waste energy production like through the means we were talking about before, we're sitting golden.
We could be growing a whole load of vegetables in greenhouses on the tops of supermarkets, and they could harvest them and they'd be on the counter there to sell within 30 minutes for the people that don't want to grow their own.
Yeah, exactly.
Because there'll always be people like, you know, you can brew your own beer, you can brew your own wine, but not everyone wants to.
We need to look at sort of what the Thai system is around their medical, so-called air quotes, medical cannabis. So they put forward an idea that the community could grow cannabis, sell it to them, they test it, grade it based on a grade system, not all that dissimilar from sort of jewelry or food that we have at the minute with class like A and B, etc. And then they give them a fair wage for it. So then the same could be true for food for local areas. So if then, say, in Durham, everyone that grew I was going to say zucchinis, that's a very odd, what do people grow commonly? Carrots, there you go.
Yeah, carrots.
Then we could use the grading system that already exists to be able to procure them from individual, either collective growers, allotments, or even individuals. So that then you could have those minor streams of income while also then offsetting your excesses, your expenses through growing your own food.
Yeah, and you might have carrots and I might have potatoes and we can just trade.
Exactly. And I think that's a powerful incentivization system. It's one that can fit within the current neoliberalistic capitalist system that we live under, because it would still benefit those up there. What it does is it brings the bottom out of poverty. This is obviously what they're discussing with like universal basic income and things like that. It's a way for them to placate and not cap the top, but lift the bottom out.
Yeah, but also it's an opportunity for people to take credit for stuff they didn't fucking do.
Not always. That's everything. Nothing changes unless some fucker can sign their name to it and go, I did that.
I'd love to see sort of more community allotments, and also
me too,
where there isn't any green space whatsoever that someone can use, that maybe local authorities look at buildings and they do sort of like growing completely indoors, hydroponically, under lights.
You've got some amazing potential systems here. So if you freed up, say, governmental money and you went after the 20 pubs a week that have been closing, that was a number before COVID, so that'll be much larger given what's happened to the catering and entertainment sectors in this country. They are set up perfect for this. The entirety of the flats and everything else upstairs could be made into micro hydroponic areas to grow microgreens, salads, etc., where people can get a hands-on experience of cultivating. You've then got the kitchened areas of it. You've then got the booth and the seating of it, and then you can serve them those foods. So
Yeah.
what you're doing is you're giving them a hands-on dining experience as well. So I think things like
you've
that.
already got like in London, you've already got posh restaurants doing sort of like the whole sort of growing herbs and stuff. Well, I think it's sort of like growing off site and then sort of on site herbs there, so we can take them directly under lights. You've heard of growing underground in London.
Yeah, with the microgreens projects, I've seen them. They're quite impressive in terms of the water capture and everything else. The ability to reduce it down using LEDs to such a minute amount of energy it's impressive. And again, it's showing an ingenuity to use wasted spaces. If we went to the councils, you click on you said your local council property for sale. They own so fucking much of everything in every goddamn town and city, schools, libraries, all of these old buildings that, again, are infrastructure that are going to take a long time for the developers to be interested in, that could be utilized at this point for these community endeavors to, again, create the incentive for people to want to be self-sufficient through food. Because it's the same thing we preach about with cannabis. A person who is then using it for a legitimate therapeutic outcome, or the reduction of a symptom or management of a condition, the act of cultivation, of tending and loving and caring for that plant is as therapeutic. The same is then true of food. Fucking, I can't think of the Greek philosopher who spoke of it.
Plato?
No, Heredides, or whatever the hell his name was. And he said, let food be thy medicine. You know what I mean? And it's the relationship we have with food, the wrongness and the incorrect relationship that we have, the damage that's being caused by things like sugar and artificial sweeteners and enhanced flavors and stuff like that then trick our wants and our needs, and meant that we're not getting our basic nutritional needs met. So doing stuff like this gives people a real interaction with, oh my God, that's what a tomato looks like. That's what a real tomato looks like. Not one of these standardized, has to be only fit this thing and all the rest is thrown away. Once people see the diversity in it and they can understand the spectrum of the palette of these different fruits and vegetables, I think it will give people a much more intimate relationship with them. And that will only benefit them massively, mentally, physically, spiritually.
On the tomato side, the ones that are totally tasteless, the Dutch call them water bombs. And they're known for like, oh yeah, we send the water bombs to the UK.
When I went to America and I traveled around and I sampled some of their veg and stuff, and I was just like, what the fuck is this? It looks like it. It's painted it. It's an imitation. It's a novelty product. It should be sold in a joke shop. There's no nutritional value to this. It may be a larger size, but it's covered in toxic fucking pollutants. It's not grown to the best of its means. It's got zero nutritional value.
But expectation, though, come on. I mean, wasn't pizza at one stage one of the 5 a day or something that counted as a vegetable? I'm not even making that up. That was legit in some stage.
Yeah.
They were like, grand, that's part of one of your 5 a day. Are you fucking for real? Jesus Christ. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love pizza.
Actually, when I said about the growing on top of a supermarket, that actually is happening somewhere in America. I can't remember exactly which supermarket it was, but it was the whole greenhouse on top of the roof. If you think about the roof space we've got available, and it was the whole sort of being able to like harvest and then literally have it for sale within half an hour. Actually isn't a pie in the sky idea. That's actually happening.
That's great.
That could happen. I mean, if you look at say like schools, for example, as well, another place, tons of roof space, could be greenhouses, could be growing, could be feeding those kids decent food.
It should be a mandatory class for them, so that each week they go in and help. So actually, if each class did it throughout the week, the kids would always be tending to it. Yeah, you'd need the adult supervision at start and end of day to ensure the efficiency of the crops. But yeah, every school could be independent for its fresh fruit, vegetables, herbs.
Look,
I mean,
while giving the kids obviously not all, but if you actually if you funded it, if it was funded, it could be, and it gives them the education for the future.
I was very lucky that when I grew up in a rural area. I grew up in a place called Warwick, and my mum and dad had an allotment. We also had like a decent sized back garden with a vegetable patch, and from a really, really, really young age, I was in that vegetable patch helping. I speak quite often to a friend of mine who's a teacher, and he tells me, well, I can only describe as horror stories of kids that come to school not only malnourished, don't have all the right clothing. We're talking sort of real inner city Wolverhampton here, which is where I currently live now. But these kids not only are like underfed, they don't recognize different basic foods like vegetables because they're used to everything coming out of a packet.
Yeah, ready meal generation.
And there's a whole educational thing, like you say here, if we were doing some sort of much more sort of local growing and community growing and growing in schools, and we are talking vegetables here and salad, it helps those kids, so they should be able to recognize that this is a potato, this is a tomato from a really sort of young primary school age. It doesn't just come out of a bag that you've got from farm foods. Other frozen retailers are available.
This is true. This is true. And just to cut across Simpa there before he goes off on one, Cuba is a great example of this. Cuba's urban farming is unparalleled, really. I mean, how centered it is around the community itself, and how important it is like something for us to work towards, for sure. And I'm not, obviously I'm aware of the political state of Cuba. I know it's communist. I know all of it, but honestly, I think I watched a documentary on it. It might have been a documentary, or it might have been Monty Don or something like that went over there, and there's like an hour and a half special that I'll try and root out the link for. It's definitely worth watching. Because it not only changes the mentality of the community, it changes the look of the community, the value of the community. Do you know what I mean? Of the area that you're in, because of how floral it can get, how proud everybody is of their patch, that they're all coming together, and it sort of cascades into this like beautiful showing of just individualism within that community. It's fantastic. Anyway, I'm going to shut the fuck up now, but you should watch it.
Yeah, definitely do try and dig out the link, because I'd be interested, and I do want to share that with our audience. It's interesting. Obviously, Cuba developed that out of necessity because of decades of embargoes placed on them by the US and pressure from international bodies. Yeah, regardless of the political, socio-political situation there, need has meant that they've kind of had to, whereas greed of corporations in the Western world has meant that most kids, most adults, they get to the point of convenience. So if you've then got wealth, you either eat out or you fast food, you grab a Greg's sausage roll or whatever, and food is so over manufactured. Most people look at base ingredients and don't know how to make a meal. They could have cupboards full of shit and just not know how to put them together. You know what I mean? Because they've never been taught, and it's not that they've not been taught or handed down recipes or how to make very basic staples or whatever else. It's that they've not been taught to be curious. They've not been taught to seek flavor. They've not been taught to enjoy food. Food has either been something that is just, it's fuel for the fire. And I think that it starts very young. So again, if we can get these kids engaged, if you put it on the curriculum that by 9 you had to be able to identify 50 vegetables or some shit, that's going to change the relationship. So if that's what the kid went home talking to the mom, walking around the supermarket, that's a pepper that tastes like this. That's a this that tastes like this. Better yet, if those kids are brought,
or maybe even they grew some at school, and they grew so much they had a surplus from the school kitchen, and they could actually bring home a box of vegetables.
Exactly, and teach the generation up. That is the best fucking way to do it, because can you imagine how fast that would be? I mean, what is it? They say by 10 is that a kid can recognize 1,000 brands, the logos of 1,000 brands. It is crazy. But then when you really look at it, all this bombardment of all of this imagery, all of the psychology behind the advertising and the marketing of this, and yet there isn't an advertising campaign for apples. There isn't an advertising campaign for just fresh fruit. We tried the 5-a-day thing, and the way the government body did.
But if you say apple to a lot of kids, they immediately think of something else.
Yeah.
Don't think of a crunchy green apple.
Oh well, yeah. I was like, "What the hell are you thinking of?" And I was like, "Apple."
And they don't.
Apple.
And they certainly don't think about the fucking, the Beatles.
That's the mobile phone that I dream of.
Yeah. So someday I'll own an apple. So you can get a dozen of them down the shop, kid.
want to upgrade my Nokia 8210.
These kids don't know they were fucking born. We had a 3310, and my God, that phone was a tank. I saw it get run over by a car. The number of times arguments with girlfriends or whatever, just fuck you, bouncing a phone and then just going picking up the keypad, the screen, the battery in the back, and just going putting it back together, and it works.
Boom.
But you know, the fucking wasteful goddamn generation. But again, that shows the pervasive nature of it within capitalism, that they want people to constantly be upgrading and buying. And this is something that I respect with what we were talking about before within the hydro industry, of people that will say, do you really need that? What are you using this for? Will help inform people and give them sort of even just pause for thought themselves of going, actually, yeah, do I need this? And then being able to explain to someone, have that honest conversation with someone and go, actually, mate, I don't know what I'm talking about.
Sorry to interrupt you there, Simpa. It was funny when you mentioned the toilet rolls earlier. I think everyone in the hydro industry was laughing when everyone was stockpiling toilet rolls. I said, oh no, everyone's stockpiling Boost and A&B and lamps and pots and soil and that was our experience of it anyway.
Interesting time, yeah. Some of the local hydro shops around here stayed open and considered themselves essential business, and I would quite happily support that. They very much were.
I think technically, on a technicality of garden centres, we were and we are.
So that's an interesting point to sort of come on to, is that a lot of the hydro shops are trying to sort of rebrand. They are trying to soften themselves and make themselves seem less like sort of accessories to criminality and more of just a welcoming space. I know my local hydro shop up here, Hydro Pro, they're now on Galaxy Radio. They have an advert. No, it's not Galaxy anymore. What the hell is it called these days? Capital. That shows my fucking age. It's Capital on Capital Radio. They have stuff on buses. You know what I mean? They have billboards and stuff like that. And they're really sort of integrated in their marketing and everything else. Shows that they're really open. They're not kind of the what was perceived sort of a decade ago as these seedy places.
Yeah, I think there's still obviously very much depends on where you are and people's experience, but I still think there's some work to do in terms of hydro shops could be sometimes more welcoming, sometimes a little more friendly to our female friends. I'm not mentioning any hydro shop owners in particular, but some of you do get a little bit excited when a lady walks through the door. Maybe, think about having like a bit of an area that people can chat, have a coffee, talk, rather than just business shelves, products. Make it more of like an education centre.
I'd love to.
I see so many shops and they say, oh, we're now identifying as a garden centre. We're not hydroponics, we're horticulture. Okay, you're a garden centre. Where are your plants? And I do go to some shops and they're really, really good. They've got big trolleys of all different types of plants that they're selling. They've got really good displays. They've got tent setups with all different things growing in there, showing all the capabilities of all these different plethora of hydroponic systems. But the welcome factor was something that I was like subtly asking people when people contacted me during lockdown on social, because I get a hell of a lot of questions. Doesn't matter who I'm working for, people ask you all different types of things. I was sort of subtly dropping in there, as I do sometimes, just tell me about, do you have a favourite shop? How did you, where did you buy the last things that you were buying from? And it just seemed to be like, there's a lot of people that were really happy and they've got their favourite shop. First thing that obviously sprung to mind and sort of happened, I think, during lockdown was, I'm ordering online now. My hydro shop is at Amazon. Yeah. Okay. And you're getting good advice there? No, but just send it. And so I think really like what I have seen as well, what's been really good on the grow shop side of things is sometimes I've seen a few people that are doing sort of combination businesses now. Mm-hmm. Like they're not just hydroponics and lighting, they're obviously more garden centre products, but I've seen a couple of shops doing pet food and gardening products, fishing tackle, gardening products, trying to think about sort of like what what our sort of customers would be interested in sort of buying also. But also, I think there's some work to be done on the just general welcome factor. Make it friendly, make it a bit more bright.
Do you think it's something that is pervasive from the old? Because I mean, sort of back in the days, cops would stake out hydro shops. They'd follow people back to grows. You know, in extreme cases, they put trackers on cars of people they thought were big boys. You'd then get gangs would follow you from hydro shops as well.
Yeah,
so
I've been followed. I've been pulled over. I've been stopped as a rep. You know, what's all this stuff in your car? Yeah, would you like a business card?
Yeah. So I mean, do you think it's something that maybe it's the vanguard or the veterans of the industry, for lack of a better way of describing it, that they're probably more likely to have their guard up and more likely to be a bit paranoid about the customer base, and maybe the welcoming is representative of that kind of fear of who the fuck are you? I don't know you. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, there is so much sort of opportunity in sort of a wider horticultural garden centre image that they, you know, lots of shops sort of wish to be. Like I was talking to one shop not too far from me. It's on the other side of town in sort of like a more sort of leafy side of a city. I said, you know, you could sell like really posh lawnmowers to these local people, and you know, like the real sort of high-end petrol ones, or like the ride-on tractor even. You could probably sell those really expensive strimmers.
Yeah.
You know, there's a whole load of other things that are all related to sort of gardening that you could sell. I think it's just sometimes, I hate to use that phrase, sort of just thinking outside the box. You know, we've always sold this, and this, but we've never thought of selling that. And just also on the education side, you know, we've got so much technology at our fingertips. You can have like a nice little coffee area with like a TV screen, invite different brands to come down, as many stores do. You know, have little open days, have little gatherings. Are we allowed gatherings yet, Simpa? How many people?
From July 19th, I think. Also,
I'm just working on what I saw at Wembley last night, which means that I can do anything I want.
Yeah, I mean that's your precedent. So yeah, apparently we can do what the fuck we want. But you raise an interesting point there, that the thing that makes garden centers, what is a garden center? When people think of the image of it, it's an old couple going, and they're going and they're getting a little sandwich and a coffee, and they're pottering around, and they're just looking at everything and spending hours there. And it is
the crazy thing is the original hydroponic shops were based in garden centers. They were like a concession, because you know how an old school garden center is. You've got like your hot tub guy, your shed guy, you might have your hydroponics guy. You've got all your different, it's almost like a department store-esque setup where everyone's, you know, paying a little contribution for a piece.
I think that exactly that. I mean, that would be the ideal. Is to create, and by the nature of it, that would be more welcoming, because the people that would staff that area, you would need to have that real good customer service, that real good rapport with. And I think that by doing something like that, you almost incentivize people to hang around as well. And I think that that's something some of the stores that I've been to are really good at. I mean, most of them obviously have coffee machines and whatnot for preferred guests, as it were. But I think exactly what you're saying, the branding, the color, the lighting. I mean, for fuck's sake, the lighting in hydro shops, guys, you own all of this lighting equipment. You can make it so much better. You can actually creatively display the technology you have and make it a much more welcoming environment. Do you know what I mean? As you said before, a lot of them don't need to be so.
Like you said, Simpa, some are doing it fantastically. Like I know Aidan that is he Hydro Pro or Pro Hydro?
He is. I'm actually Hydro Pro. I'm looking at his light.
Yeah, Hydro Pro. Big shout out to Aidan there. Known him for many years, and I've seen his sort of shop grow. I think moved from next door.
They had a fire, so they had to move.
Oh, he did. Yeah, very nasty fire. Yeah, but he's got a great location there. And I always find the further north I go, the better the welcome gets.
Northerners are just welcoming in general. I think if you can get
the
past
southern
the
people are nice as well.
I
I do like my London people as well.
Yeah, my geographicalism is showing a bit there. If that's not a word, it
Yeah.
should be.
But yeah, I think if I'd probably favourite place to travel to as a rep would be Scotland. Love going up there. Get past the lakes and, you know, traffic just disappears.
Yeah, man. Yeah, Scotland's got a really good sort of a good scene. I mean, they're a bit difficult because they're under one police control. Effectively, they don't have the jurisdictional breakdown that we do through constabularies. So it means that Scotland are pretty just shit hot on most raids and whatnot. But in terms of the hobbyists, there are a lot of very ingenuitive and smart hobbyist growers that I know that produce some wonderful micro crops up in Scotland.
Fantastic.
Shout out to you know who you people are. You know who you are. But yeah, it's great to see that the industry is evolving from, like, as we said, almost the, I don't want to say the back alley, but kind of the quiet hush and to it's very
kind of
proud.
like stepping out of the shadows. As we were talking at the beginning, you know, I always used to use my nickname Jay. Everyone called me Jay. And I think in the hydro industry currently there's at least 427 different reps called Jay. But we all, majority of us now sort of using our real names. You know, we're sort of, you know, I don't say to people I work in recruitment anymore. You know, I work in the cannabis sector.
I suppose it's getting more and more legitimized, obviously, with the acceptability of the hemp industry, the CBD industry getting established and whatnot. There are a lot more legitimate, respectable uses.
Yeah, and sometimes I have to sort of qualify that with emerging cannabis sector.
Yeah,
I suppose rollers.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's still a lot of people. I mean, obviously, if someone like yourself has spent 20 years in this, obviously you're very much aware of the situation and the culture. But still, for a lot of people, they kind of will see a hydro shop and be like, "It's the druggies, they're helping the druggies," and they just can't quite.
Well, years ago, no one actually knew we were there, unless you were shopping there. It was invisible. It was like almost like a secret society.
I suppose it has changed, like I say, with Hydro Pro's advertising campaigns and whatnot, to be so out and proud. I mean, they openly associated and publicly sponsored one of our Durham City Cannabis Club events. They paid sponsorship for this, so they directly associated themselves with this. They give us equipment to give away as part of raffles and whatnot. I mean, and they really, really stepped out to kind of to go and acknowledge that a large part of their business, whether for good or for bad, is supporting an unregulated legacy cannabis market in the UK.
I mean, there's some, you know, I won't name them so I don't feel like picked on, but there's some really, really, really big brands, big nutrient brands that won't come anywhere near the cannabis word, and they spend an absolute small fortune on, it's all about lilies and tomatoes and chilies, where they probably could be spending that money on projects that encourage social responsibility. So, for example, recognizing that, as with alcohol, cannabis, some people can't have, things in moderation. They perhaps have a little bit too much of the good stuff and need some help. So why not work with some projects that help people?
Yeah, it's a shame that they're making the money from this, knowing the potential detriment that they're causing. I mean, if we look at World Health Organization statistics from the Global Drug Survey 2019, I think it was, around 10% globally, or I think it's marginally rounded up to 10, but it's 9% of cannabis users around the world could develop some form of dependence. I argue the existence of cannabis dependency syndrome, or whatever the fuck they've named it. But I do understand that there is certain habitual tendencies that become very difficult in wired neurology. These are things that are far less ingrained than alcohol, or especially tobacco, which is universally basically recognized as more addictive than heroin. So there are obviously consequences to it. And I think that it's a shame that a chunk of their profits could be used towards those minority of consumers who can end up in problematic situations. Not only that, is the education around environmentalism, for example. So pushing LEDs, for example, pushing other
and also
equipment.
Being responsible about what's in their products as well. I think again, not going to name any brands, but there's a lot of brands that are going to have a bit of a wake-up call when things change and things get more legal hopefully one day, and Mr. Regulator starts looking at what's in products a little bit more closely.
Yeah, I think I've been hearing various rumors for companies that, again, for legal reasons and for, I suppose, can't be asked getting in major fights with big companies.
You know who you are. You know what you need to do.
Yeah, and it's a difficult situation to sit and be informed. Obviously, I've tried to always be active within this sector and inform people as much as possible, but there's a lot of things that I hear that I can't prove, therefore I can't publicly potentially defame or slander anybody by stating them. It is a great point of frustration that I suppose brings me on to my next point, which is washing machines within the industry. Shops that are established to basically wash and launder illegal grow sites.
I mean, personally, on the washing machine front, I highly recommend Miele as a brand. I've had mine for 10 years. Absolute beast of a machine. There's no Beco here that's going to catch on fire. Yeah, I appreciate some people have only got Beco budgets, but as somebody said to me, whether it's lighting or washing machines, you know, buy cheap, you'll buy twice, maybe 3 times. Yeah. The old elephant in the room of organised crime and that kind of thing, and money laundering. I think there's corruption in every aspect of our lives and world, and I think, unfortunately, you know, there are always going to be people that are in business for different reasons. You've got people that went out to set up a garden centre, grow shop. They found themselves accidentally in the industry. They were just a group of friends that wanted to set up a shop to maybe supply each other with equipment. There are people in the industry who have a love of the plants, but there are also obviously people who are running businesses, you know, and it's just all about money, which I'm kind of not. It's just a difficult one, really. And I think the problem is when the powers that be see certain groups growing commercially, maybe not paying for their electricity, growing, you know, the good stuff, the beefsteak tomatoes, the cannabis, the things that they're not really supposed to grow at all. Maybe growing it in a way where they probably wouldn't consume it themselves. So full of, you know, products that are going to sort of, if you imagine plants on steroids, you know, the plants like the guy at the gym that's got those muscles that are just, you didn't just eat tuna and chicken and broccoli, did you, mate?
Yeah, it's plenty of PGR weeds, very heavy stuff that has that kind of chemically, the gassy aftertaste, and it's
So where are you going with your laundrette then, Simpa? Where's this leading, this question?
So no, I was just wondering on sort of your thoughts on what could be done to help legitimize. Obviously, we've discussed sort of briefly about the idea of moving more towards legitimacy of garden centers and things like that. We are seeing, obviously, the inevitable tidal change around the world of legislative change means the global prohibition of cannabis is inevitably going to end. It's going to take a long fucking time before we get places that are currently still punishing people with the death penalty to get on board. But I think we will start to move towards that. So I think the business owners that can see the longevity of this are going to get smart, diversify, and move with it. And I'm just wondering whether you think more people are going to move into trying to get the quick cash while they can because global legalization is coming, or whether more people will move that money into more legitimacy. Because a lot of the industry that has been established in America came from legacy money. A lot of it came from venture capitalist investment, but a lot of the people that are succeeding in quite a lot of the industry, that money's come from.
I mean, there's some fantastic skill out there. There's some amazing sort of underground gardeners that are producing some really sort of top shelf products. If I look at the level of quality over sort of like for 20 years, Yeah, but I mean, still, as with everything, there's still some absolutely terrible quality stuff out there. But the level of quality overall has just gone up massively. I mean, what I'd love to see is all those people that are working in sort of, gardens that they can't really talk about. I'd love to see those people with those skills find a place in a sort of new, whatever it might be, not prohibition 2.2, but legal sort of world, and find jobs on, in sort of legal gardening. I think we'll see, with everything that's going on at the moment, with the attention on the industry, as in on big growers, big commercial growers, I think we'll see more hobby growers sort of pop up. I think there'll be more hobby gardeners, more sort of, 1 light, 2 light growers. It's really hard to say where things are heading, really. Where do you think things are heading, Simpa, in terms of like legality?
I think that we're probably going to follow a Canadian model, given that it was quite a few British were involved in the writing of it, and Canadian law is proto-British law, as in they built it entirely off it because of the empirical links. Yeah. So I think that's the easiest thing. If you look at what's happening with Crispin Blunt and Jeff Smith at the Conservative and Labour drug policy reform groups, respectively, I think that's the general consensus of what they're pushing towards. And I think that, as we've already seen, again, without naming companies, we have seen people go from criminality to establishing brands that have become very successful brands using some of the marketing techniques that we have discussed and explored in this podcast so far, and are now sitting around tables with government officials helping to push in things like agriculture, push in things like post-COVID economic recovery. So I think that an inevitable change is probably going to happen in the UK quite fast. I think that we're going to see licensing changes around hemp cultivation to create a domestic CBD market. There's then going to be the continuation of the war between sort of medical and supplemental that we're seeing with the Cannabis Industry Council versus the Centre for Medical Cannabis and the Association of the Cannabinoid Industry. And I think as a consequence to that, the hydro industry is either going to be sunk because it's full of criminals. I'm not saying that as I'm saying it. I mean, that will be the excuse used by the government, or it will be offered an opportunity to become more highly integrated to, I was going to say respectable society, but that's not what I mean, into the accepted society. Do you know what I mean? Whereas at the minute, it's still to a lot of people is very much a fringe industry. Whereas I think the integration of it more closely to traditional retail and garden centers will give it an opportunity for longevity. Whereas where we're seeing in Canada and America, unless you have got part and bought up as part of the vertical integration of what I'm terming the medical cannabis industrial complex, you're left on the wayside, and you're really struggling to kind of get your brand going until the micro projects can really kickstart. You know what I mean? Until there's tens of thousands of micro projects serving community needs. At the minute, it's still very much a handful of few big boys that are buying everybody up and trying to own the collective infrastructure. And the best business model for them is to own everything. You don't want to be buying from brands. You want to bring in that brand. So I think that when the dust settles on this war, the smart ones are still going to be there. I still think they're rebellious, but I think a lot of people are just going to go, this isn't worth it, especially with what's happening now with the cash thing, and they're trying to move them all onto sort of digital accounts.
And when a lot of the big producers over in Canada, when they produce things sort of like very sort of average product, and didn't that sort of fuel sort of a lighting of sort of the black market, producing sort of far more sort of craft products? I'd liken it to probably sort of a pub, and it's only sort of selling
bog standard shite, piss water.
Yeah. Not to name any.
That's actually a brand.
Brands there.
That's one of them craft ales.
But your guy wants or your lady wants some top shelf whiskey or some higher strength beer, and it can be available just down the road. What's going to happen? They're going to get it, aren't they?
But this is it. If the technology, the availability, and the will is there, a product will exist. Prohibition doesn't work. We have seen this with everything, whether it's a prohibition of substances, of experiences, of beliefs of sexuality, whatever it is. You cannot prohibit something out of existence. If people feel a certain way, choose to live a certain way, want to engage in a certain activity, they're going to fucking do it. The only obligation and responsibility of the government is to reduce the fucking harms of that goddamn thing. And part of that is...
the cash thing, obviously, that's a challenge. You know, it's sort of generally been sort of a cash industry. Lots of shops, you know, taking lots of card payments because of the fact that people are ordering online and stuff. I
think a lot of the new generation feel a lot more comfortable with it. I mean, there's kids that have grown up in the world now that have never ripped up roach. They've lived in a world where corner shops sell roach packets. Do you know what I mean? They get big skins everywhere. They didn't learn how to make a 3-skin setup or anything like that. They've had an entirely different interaction and upbringing with cannabis. And so then when they've come to grow, a lot of them are then looking around at social media. They're looking around at the rest of the world. They live in a global society. They understand it's illegal here and whatever else, but they see the future and they're going, I'm going to learn to grow. I want to learn this. I want to learn how to extract. Because they're seeing an industry that's booming around the world that's inevitably going to come here. And they want a piece of that fucking pie. And I think this is something the hydro industry can play a huge part in, of incentivizing and educating the youth to want to take part in it.
Yeah, the green rush, it's coming.
It really is. And this is what I'm saying about, I hope the hydro industry and all of its wonderful, beautiful weirdos can survive this thing. I hope too many of them are not disincentivized by the frenzied feeding of the vultures and the sharks. You know what I mean? That they will stand fast against this and kind of go, you know what? I've been here for fucking 15 years. I'm going to be here for another 50. Because those are the sites that when it's legal, they'll be able to offer a service like no other.
There's ways that you can migrate people onto paying by card. You offer them a discount for paying by card. You know, you explain to them why. You know, you're under pressure from the banks and everything. I think it's not just hydro shops that are having issues. You know, I've heard of barber shops, window cleaners, all kinds of people, builders that take cash over lockdown because card payments have soared and cash use has dropped by, I think it was something like nearly 40%. You know, anyone that's taking a lot of cash, you must be a criminal. No.
But all this is going to do is then incentivize further laundering. All it's then going to do is get someone to buy the equipment and restock it. Yeah. You know what I mean? There's means and ways that people will find out ways to do this and create paper trails and whatever else. And I think it's emblematic of the problem that we're seeing around the world in legal regions, that instead of ending the prohibition of the full breadth of people's potential experience with cannabis, they've gone, you can have this, and this. If it falls out of that remit, you're still a criminal. I mean, there's just been a bust that I'm writing about at the minute in California, done over 10 days across 200 locations, that seized 1.19 billion in cannabis. And it's ridiculous. It's not going to go to market. It's going to be destroyed. 1.19 billion.
1.19 billion is that dollars or in tons or pounds?
Sorry, dollars. $1.19 billion worth, right? Bear in mind, California
I'm trying to.
Their market is only worth 4.4 billion in 2020.
Five plants.
5 plants.
Sorry. Wow. I'm just trying to visualize that amount of cannabis in my head.
I'm trying to pull. I've got the.
Can you help me there somewhere?
Scrooge McDuck. You know DuckTales when he's swimming in the vault of gold.
So they seized in this bus. They seized 16 tons of cannabis, 375,000 plants, 33,480 pounds, which is about 15,000 kilos.
Okay.
Yeah, fucking ridiculous. And again, this is then going to be seized. It's going to be destroyed. Bear in mind, California's market is only worth 4.4 billion is what they sold in the entirety of 2020. So they're going to destroy a quarter potential of that. Of that, they generated 1.1 billion in taxation. So they're going to write off of this bust somewhere in the region of 250 million in tax, because it's illegal, illicit weed. Whereas if they could test it and then go, actually, no, this meets the same standard that the big boys who paid to play met. You think of all of this seized and destroyed cannabis. I mean, in the UK, Home Office statistics came out recently that said there are 358 seizures of cannabis every day in the UK. It amounts to 2 point something billion pounds worth a year. is fucking consumed up in the UK. The market here is huge. Yeah, only 6,000 people can get prescriptions because we can't find the quality product. We have to go through all these stringent things. When
There's
actually,
no
their
evidence,
products,
Simpa. There's no evidence.
their products are getting recalled for mold, and then you've got people that are literally saying like, I've never experienced mold in the legacy market, in the unregulated market. Most of the growers that I know, if they found mold in their product, they would destroy it. They would not want that to ever, because it would harm their brand, their image as a grower. It harms their ego as a grower. That, oh my God, oops, I'm going to destroy this and be more stringent with my product. It incentivizes them to be better. Whereas the larger corporations, once you get to a certain level, as you were saying before, whether it be the criminal cartels or it be the legal cartels, once you grow at such a scale, you can't have love and compassion as the key ingredients in that grow. You can't be trying to grow the best product for the end user. You are growing a standardized, homogenized product that will behave in ways that you understand, in ways that are predictable, so that you can control the environment, the climate, the nutrients, and the cycle for it. So you can then get in idiots to just go run this, run this, run this. And you cheapen the costs at all point. Whereas these micro growers, these people, as you say, that are in grows and producing products, there are people quietly walking around the streets of this country that have produced some of the best fucking genetics they've ever had, but can't say shit. They can't claim it.
Exactly,
There are people who've got seeds from the early 90s sat in fridges, in freezers, that just can't yet pull them out. We have so much lost and trapped potential because they don't feel welcome. They're still the same guys that won't go into hydro shops because the same guys that now won't go into hydro shops because of these card payment systems. They don't want to be identified. They go in as J as a customer. You know what I mean? They deserve the opportunity. They deserve the potential. They deserve a piece of the pie.
As somebody in business once said to me, and they do some work with people that have perhaps had like a checker past, been to prison, been in a gang, been in trouble. They said, if you can run a gang, you can run a company.
Fact.
Yeah.
Absolute fact. And many of them have got onto. They just need somebody to explain a few things to them, and most of all, believe in them.
And have that supportive structure. And I think that would be the social justice that is missing from, or social equity that is missing from any of the legalization models we've seen around the world. A lot of them pledge well and say that, we'll give a certain amount of licenses and opportunities to minorities and disparaged communities. But ultimately, the level of compensation and recompense needs to be nearly fucking 90%, needs to be far even higher than that. It should be entirely the people who have been harmed, who've gone to jail, who've had their lives ruined by this, that should be given first opportunity. It should almost be automatic dibs that if you've served time in prison for cannabis, you should be given a job. Doesn't matter how long ago it was.
Yeah.
You should almost go, you served time for this. We're fucking sorry. Here's
definitely,
a job.
Definitely given an interview.
Yeah, at least. Yeah, exactly. I'm not saying give them the job if they're incompetent.
Yeah.
Give them the opportunity for them to prove themselves.
Automated like positive discrimination because you've been in trouble for this automatically gives you an interview for this.
Yeah, or even better, right? If then once it's starting to kick off in a lot of the American universities that they're having courses for cannabis. So then what you do is you give them free tuition for those courses if you've got a previous arrest for cannabis possession or even better cultivation, because then it shows that you can, especially if you've got, say, on your arrest sheet, operated 1,000 plant grow, you definitely deserve a fucking interview with some of these large companies rather than bringing these kids up from learning from university. They've never seen a plant, that have never grown in an illegal environment, because in that pressure, in that criminality is where the best ingenuity is found. Where do you think we discovered how to insulate and silence fans? How do you think we discovered how to create filter systems and all of this? It was fucking necessity. And the same way the Cubans did to create their food integrated system, that's what has pushed innovation. So I think that those people, again, their creativity, their ingenuity needs to be part of this industry. And unfortunately, far too many of them were criminalized, had their lives ruined, had everything taken from them. And they've been left, bitter and cast out from what is now this golden era of the green rush. I think that, again, the part of that social equity would be to build these fuckers back up, because without their sacrifice, without their fortitude to stand against illegality and prohibition, that we wouldn't have got to where we are. that's a hard agreement by the looks of it.
Absolutely. No,
Nothing
we
really.
agree. We agree.
Nothing more needs to be said about it. Like, you know, that kind of way. It's deserved. It's deserved. I don't really need to add to it. It just, I'm doing it now, and I'm already detracting.
I just think legal medicinal growers would be missing a trick if they didn't explore and seek out the talent that's out there.
The best of the best. They should be doing the job. You know what I mean? Get them. Fucking.
This is someone that we should potentially seek out for a guest in the future. Is maybe somebody who works in probation or some form of reform like that, as to whether they would be interesting. Because you could, if you got recruitment, probation, and a few other sectors together, you could create a pipeline from prison to employment.
Prison to plants.
Prison to plants. I fucking love it. Because again, it's pointless as reforming people through punitive measures if you're not going to give them an opportunity to do something with it.
Let's somehow make that happen, Simpa.
I think as a project, honestly, it needs to occur because you've got Last Prisoner Project, for example, in America, where it's about then liberating them. But ultimately, if you are just going to throw back onto the streets into a deprived socioeconomic situation, somebody who's had their lives destroyed from them, and they're left again, they're bitter and angry towards a system that's now glorifying it. I mean, there's fucking dozens of there's about half a dozen companies on the London Stock Exchange that are medical cannabis companies. You know what I mean? The industry's valued at 600 million plus, and yet you're still sat in a prison cell for a couple of kilos or whatever, you know what I mean? And I think that, a system like that, through education, through then being able to position them with the industry, would be a hell of a step forward to undoing some of the wrongs of prohibition. So this actually brings me on to quite a good segue into another part of the conversation. You're a voluntary director at Wolverhampton Voluntary Sector Council. So have you been in the voluntary sector for a long time?
Yeah, I've been a director, board trustee of Wolverhampton Voluntary Sector Council since 2014. Actually, how I came to have that position, I was actually a service user on one of their projects. It's no big secret, but I suffer with my mental health. Most people in the industry know. And I was actually sort of attending one of their groups that they're running. This is sort of over, it's been like 10 years ago now. 10 plus years ago, actually. 2021. Like a positive action for mental health group that was funded by Wolverhampton Voluntary Sector Council. Who they actually are, if you imagine, like the easiest way to describe this organisation, it's like, if you imagine like a hub and all like small projects come off as spokes of a wheel. So they're like the hub that can tell like a smaller group how to apply for funds from like the big lottery or what funding's available. That's us as Wolverhampton Voluntary Sector Council. So we're mainly, in terms of an organisation, we're mainly working with the most disadvantaged, deprived and challenging people you will find. There's voluntary sector councils all over the country. We basically work on Wolverhampton, which is the city I live in, and partner with other voluntary sector councils in and around the Black Country area. So I sit on a board of all different types of people. There's local authority councillors, observers on there. There's the person in charge of the clinical commissioning group. There's leader of the YMCA, to give you like a flavour there. And then we've got all the staff that work on all different projects. So these could be projects from, we've got projects that work on mental health. We've got projects in social prescribing, which is quite a new term. That's a project I'm working on at the moment. I actually also volunteer as a frontline worker, as a digital buddy. So what social prescribing is, if no one's hasn't heard of this term before, you can actually occasionally get a prescription from your doctor that doesn't have any pharmaceuticals on it. All it is a social prescription. So they might identify that you need some help with, for example, IT. like a lot of people became very isolated, even more isolated than they already were during lockdown. And you might have some really basic IT skills, or you might need some help getting online. We're running a project with the social prescribing team, with those advisors, where we give people telephone-based support at the moment, soon to be in the same room support on helping them to get online. So could be,
Nice.
I really want to do my shopping online. I really want to talk to my family. How do I set up a Zoom call? How do I get an email address? And I think we, as very sort of connected online people, we sometimes forget that not everyone has those skills. The other thing that I was really sort of proud to be involved in, obviously during the lockdown, voluntary services had to become sort of like small armies overnight, working with local authorities, coordinating distribution of food parcels, became like the go-to people for hand sanitizer. Where can we get hand sanitizer? So I was involved in all kinds of stuff, from getting hand sanitizer, found a company that could produce that over in Nottingham, a company called Farm to Farm, who very kindly provided a hell of a lot of hand sanitizer, like gallons and gallons and gallons of the stuff. Got that middle of lockdown, brought it over to Wolverhampton, and through our network, through the fact that we're the hub, we can get it out to those organisations that are working sort of front line with the homeless, with people with mental health problems, people in poverty, people who all of a sudden found themselves going to the food bank, didn't even know what a food bank was. So it's something just to track back there, sort of, I've gone literally from somebody who needed help and support at a project as a service user, as someone who was in receipt of benefits and in quite a dark place with their mental health, to a few years later, I was elected to the board and taking part in running the organisation.
Yeah.
So and it's
bad,
really,
is it?
no, it's not bad. And I think if you've never done it, I'd encourage everybody to do some work where you don't get paid, i.e. volunteer, however much that is, if it's a couple of hours a month, or whether you're a person that's got enough time to maybe do something like volunteer for St John's Ambulance or something, if that's the kind of thing you want to do every week. There's something about helping people and not being paid for it. For me, the sense of reward and satisfaction is immense. And it was very much dropping into a completely different world, sort of like, from being working on sort of like a front line of sales for multiple brands in grow shops, in sort of very different worlds. Then sort of, sometimes I might have been for going to sort of like a licensed legal cannabis grow that's licensed by the government, then to sort of like be working sort of frontline in Wolverhampton, boots on the ground with people in real crisis, really ground you. I could be around sort of people with, in the corporate world, in the jobs I've done, with a hell of a lot of money, flying all around the world, different sort of places, all different shows, lots of party. And then I've always found sort of coming back to the city that I now live in, Wolverhampton, and sort of, doing a little bit of volunteering, a little bit of giving back, and it kind of resets you and grounds that sort of like ego that might be sort of manifesting or growing.
Yeah, I think it's a good way to humble yourself, isn't it?
I
think that acts of service is something I echo your sentiments of sort of over my time. I've been in that dark place many a time, and I think one of the things that got me out of the I suppose what was my, I hope to be last funk, but let's call it latest for now because, you know, I'm not too pessimistic, was the idea of acts of service. Was that I can get paid for some of the work that I do, but a lot of what I've chosen to do with my life over the past several years has been for what I believe to be the better good. And there is a certain sense of the fact that there isn't the payment to it. It isn't tainted by a potential other motivator. So every time I go, oh God, I want to give up with something, I go, oh no, I'm going to do it. It's not because I need that money. It's not because I have that underlying, it's almost like a threat of violence ultimately, because that's what hunger is. So without having that motivator, I think it gives a more purity to what you're doing. It allows you to, not from a point of ego and yes, look at me and I must succeed in a competitive mindset, to more of a compassionate mindset, and of how can I actually give my best to this, not from what I can get from it and go, all right, they're going to pay me £10 an hour, you will get £10 worth of work from me. Do you know what I mean? It's a different mindset. So then if you are one of these people that is motivated and does have that compassion and that drive to go, it starts in frustration for most of us. And once we identify it and then go, actually, I am somebody and I can do something, the smallest, almost seemingly insignificant acts always snowball and build. And it is that almost training of an atrophied muscle through kindness that we learn how to be, frankly, more human.
As somebody once said to me on the money subject, never chase money, stay humble, and let the money chase you. Let the money chase you, which is an interesting way to look at things. You know, it's sometimes, you know, if you're out there doing something, be it voluntary or paid, it might not be exactly what you want to do at that particular moment, but it's who you'll meet by being in that situation.
Mm-hmm.
Like the hydro industry and the cannabis industry is a very, very connected world. Like I've never been connected with so many people around the world through social media, WhatsApp, all different, you know, Telegram, all different ways of communicating, through brands, and certainly through, like you say, the humbling experience of volunteering and both seeing sort of, you know, friends during the lockdown that had really good jobs, who were airline pilots, and now drive vans for Tesco delivering shopping. But, you know, they're keeping their chin up. They've had a major salary drop of about 90%. But they get up in the morning, they're doing something, they're feeling, it's that value and it's that feeling. I think we've all got to sort of, you have to have something to get up for. You know, you've got to have some purpose. Not everyone, you know, we're not all going to be the next Prime Minister, the next President of the United States.
God forbid.
Yeah, we're not all going to be company directors, leaders. You know, there's lots of people that are very happy with their lot. They enjoy their job, whatever that job may be. And I think during the lockdown, we have seen, you know, whether you believe in COVID, whether you're a conspiracy theorist, we have seen the best in a lot of people. I think we've seen a lot of people get a lot more respect, certainly in retail, that they perhaps didn't get before. You know, but they're there on the front line, whatever they're selling, you know, whether it's Tesco, corner shop, grow shop, they're there providing the service.
Yeah, I think it humbled people. I think that, wait, I can't go outside, I can't do this, I can't do that. And they kind of had to stop and address the habitual cycles that they'd got themselves in. Most of us operate day to day on pre-existing patterns and pre-programmed systems. Do you know what I mean? And rarely do we get the opportunity to actually pause and go, wait, what the fuck am I doing? What do I want to do? Where am I going? And lockdown for millions of people suddenly went, oh, how are you going to deal with this? That perpetual boredom, which most of us have not faced in the technical age, because we've always got a fucking phone in our hand. We've always got something to placate us. There is such an infinite amount of data. And I think for a lot of people, they kind of went, what do I like? When they watch a program and go, I don't really like this, but I'm 3 series into it. Scrap
Yeah.
that. Then
Or
a lot of
it's,
people reconnected with like films from their youth or whatever, and people really, I think, because of that, the nostalgia crept in, and people went, "This is not who I wanted to be." And I think a lot of people felt the shit, but a lot of people have built themselves from it.
And also, a lot of people got time to spend with their wives, partners, husbands, and for some people that's worked out, and for other people that hasn't. It's thrown a lot of people apart. Some people with small kids, but I know, they've made the best of it. They've said, I never would have had this chance had it not been for furlough. I've been able to spend some time with my kids. I'm normally working 12 hours a day at that job that I'm not so keen on. And me and the wife, or me and the partner, are like ships in the night. One's working night shift in worst case scenario, one's working day. And all of a sudden, they built a little school, a little garden. It's all hunky-dory. It's good. And they're realizing, make the best out of a bad situation. Obviously, for a lot of people, it wasn't quite so good. They realized that they didn't get on with that other half, and they've knocked 7 bells of shit out of each other, and now they're divorced. Well, thinking about it.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, millions of people fell through the furlough scheme, so they weren't covered by it. Some of the draconian rules that were then applied to benefits, even though they said they were opening them up, meant a lot of people fell through some very deep and severe cracks. Obviously, we know food bank usage has gone up. Child poverty is one of the highest, I think, the highest rate it's ever been. We're seeing consequences of this all over the place. But again, what you said before about sort of respect, I think there is an idea that we respect each other. So I think that hopefully when this is released next week on the 19th, that will be the date that the UK finally ends social distancing measures. But I think that other than, say, the scenes you saw at Wembley, when alcohol or another sort of thing is involved, I think most people will still in their general lives not be as close to each other. And I think because of that, there will be hopefully, in my ever optimistic mindset, that people will kind of just have that acknowledgement that it's, instead of ranking the person that they see, they just see them as a person. So instead of looking at them and assessing them and going, I'm not going to move out of the way for you. All of that complex neurology that was attached to the etiquette and class system that we were forced into, I think a lot of that has been taken aback, because the interactions I know that I personally had within supermarkets or within retail with other customers, for example, when I'm emblazoned with weed shit, when I'm stinking of weed or whatever, it's been such a different vibe. Instead of me being a threat or whatever, most people were glad just to see a smiling face. We're just happy to interact with another happy human at a time of quite scary times. You know what I mean? When we first started this, it was pitched as the end of the goddamn world to us. And
2 weeks into lockdown, when I was driving in the middle of the hardest part of the lockdown, there's hardly anybody on the roads, just like lorries and essential workers, and went to pick up all that hand sanitizer. It did feel like the end of the world.
And I think
it just felt like, because I live on quite a busy road, so when it's quiet, it feels a bit strange. Like I've sort of got used to sort of, the racetrack of police sirens and ambulances and general hubbub of the city, because I live really close to the city centre. So when it's not there, it's like, I remember watching, going off a bit of a tangent here, I decided, I know what I'll watch. I'll watch 28 Days Later, then I'll watch 28 Weeks Later.
Awesome movies.
Yeah. Probably not a good idea to watch those, then go out with the dog and there's nobody there. It's like, where did everyone go? Plays with your mind a little bit.
But it just shows that, again, it's irreparably, I would say, changed the consciousness of the collective society. I think that the way we're going to interact with each other is going to change. And I think that obviously we're at a precipice where drug laws in general are going to change. Where cannabis goes, others will follow. This is an inevitable adage, I would say, across the board. Wherever cannabis is being legalized, other substances are decriminalized. Therapies are created through novel therapies are created using currently illicit substances through very restrictive licensing. So they're modifying the legislation to create space for these things. And as a consequence of that, no matter how restrictive, they are going to create an opposing legacy market. So as soon as they have psilocybin therapies on street corners in cities, you're going to have more widely available psilocybin, which again is going to change the consciousness of the culture. So I think we're living in this weird age between a mass traumatized society that's got complex PTSD from the pandemic response of this country and the news and the media and everything, and then the healing point where we can incorporate these substances to actually deal with this shit. We're in this no man's land in between, where last night I prayed that England would win the World Cup, not because I care for fucking football, but because I was worried of the consequences of it. And within 40 seconds, I was proven tragically right. The racist barrage that was unloaded across social media was fucking disgusting. We are never more needing of these substances into our society. So this brings me to a question, which is that, do you see your worlds colliding in the future? If then the stigma of drugs is ended, if prohibition is ended and everything is legalized in some form, do you think the voluntary sector and the people that you sort of work within would seek to incorporate therapies to deal with complex mental traumas, or would seek to allow social spaces for people that choose to consume these to deal with their individual trauma?
Definitely. I think the team I work with, and sort of knowing about sort of the drug projects that we already work on, we're very sort of a kind of bunch of people that are very forward thinking and thinking outside the box. You know, we're dealing with groups and people that are you know, class A dependent, homeless, complex mental health issues, raft of other issues, you know, previous offences, etc. Very sort of open to sort of what we could do. We're sort of in that sort of position where we're sort of governed by law of the land, law of the city, who's funding us. A lot of the funding does come from big lottery and donations. Not as much funding these days coming from local authority or central government. Yeah, I look forward to a future where, you know, perhaps sort of die-hard Daily Mail readers have opened their eyes a bit, for want of a better analogy.
I do too, because if we look at the investment vessels that have been moved from cannabis in America and Canada, they are very much moving into the psychedelic sector, into companies that are patenting novel compounds and even, like, say, the therapies and various technology used within them. It's, yeah, that is the new green rush, I suppose, that they're playing for. And I think it would be I can't think of the word that I was looking for there. It would be short-sighted of the rest of the world, especially the care sector and the voluntary sector that is trying to help people who are at the higher end of dependency issues, to see what is coming and be, instead of just pushing them through a system which will milk them and pull the fucking money out, they will actually be able to stabilize and help them get a better existence. Because again, it's all well and good as dealing with the complex trauma of these individuals, but if you then throw them back into an economic situation where there are no jobs, there is no employment, there is no anything for them, they're very quickly going to potentially end up in the same position.
I get loads of questions about cannabis and oils and all different kinds of cannabis related questions, but what I'd like to see is a time where people will ask those as part of the any other business in a meeting, or they'll ask them in the presence of other colleagues, and they won't send me that. I don't mind people sending me that private email off their private account because they don't want anybody else to know, or could I just have a word about this, or please don't tell anybody. And it's just I think we just need to make things more normal, more accepting.
I think we're on that.
We're sort of, you know, like I said to you about the whole thing, you know, working in the industry, how we all used to use like a little bit of a fake name. I think majority of people now with social are, you know, showing their face, using their real name, not being afraid to talk about certain subjects. Obviously, we've all got to be very careful not to incriminate ourselves. Yeah,
indeed. And I think as we've discovered from this conversation, the progression is there. I just hope that there's a sort of an acceleration in the time scale of it, because ultimately the powers that be are moving to, in my sort of understanding of it, co-opt drugs from the culture. They've tried war, it doesn't work. They can't prohibit them out of existence, but if they then co-opt them and then sell them back to us through their therapeutic therapy, and through their pharmaceuticalized versions, then I think that we're going to miss a great opportunity of this that came with the first great cannabis rush in America, is that it can empower and enrich people that otherwise would not have the potential to affect real change within their communities. And because of this, we're seeing great social justice and social equity projects occurring in places like Colorado, in places like Oregon, where they are trying to decriminalize all drugs. They are trying to create community rights to have, say, peyote ceremonies and things like that. They're really trying to create a community-based model in the face of corporate takeovers. So I suppose then leading into a question is, what is the best things that I suppose the industry could do to avoid a mass corporate takeover?
Sorry, Simpa, I was just having a wee. Yeah, I'll just, 1 sec, I'll just mute. Right. I think in terms of corporate takeover, I put people into you just simply put them into two camps. You've got the people that are interested about where their products come from, and the people that quite like their job, quite like a bit of, Emmerdale, EastEnders, quite like certain foods, quite like going to the pub regularly on a Friday, kind of people you could set your watch by. They don't really have a huge opinion on many things. And then you've also got the people that do have an opinion, do care where things come from. No disrespect to either group of people, but you've got people that are happy. A bit like how I said, not everyone wants to be a director or a president or a leader or a manager. They're quite happy doing whatever they're doing, whatever job it is. They're quite happy. They watch certain programs on the telly, but certain people go, "Oh, you're a bit thick watching that, aren't you?" Well, why do you watch that? That's for pensioners. They eat certain foods and they're just not interested. In terms of sort of a general awakening, I think certainly the more connected younger generation are much more sort of conscious about where things come from, who's involved. I think we also at a situation with sort of information and connectivity, there's almost too much information, and so many sort of let's say end users, customers of products I've had interactions with. It's like when you get to sort of the root cause of what they want to ask, what the question is, what the problem is, there's so much misinformation out there. There's lots of good information, but it's I think it's understanding what's opinion and what's fact.
Well, we live in a post-truth era, so it's incredibly hard to discern what is truth, because everything has an agenda on attached to it.
Yeah, I think with in terms of our favorite plants, I think what we don't want to see is sort of prohibition 2.1.
Yeah, we don't just want to see an extension of the racism, the classism, the elitism that has pervaded the prohibition of cannabis. I think that, we touched quite a lot on the subjects this evening, the steps that I think the industry can kind of move in. And I think, as you said, there are enough good cookies within the industry that I think should hopefully...
There's loads. There's hardly any
drive it.
There's hardly any bad people. There's not any, generally, any industry, any country, any place I've been, generally found good people. I think if you're looking for bad people, you'll find them in any situation. If you're looking for good people, you'll find them. If you're fairly worldly wise, you'll find good people, and you'll know how to swerve the bad people. Yeah. I think it's looking. Me personally, I don't have like an agenda. I think some people, that person, sometimes you get that phone call from that individual who's perhaps like an acquaintance sort of friend. They probably think you're the friend, but you don't think them as a friend. And you think, oh, it's them again. What are they after? And you're just waiting for them to ask. And it's a one-way street. Yeah, I think in terms of sort of like big corporations, I think there are some that do put a lot back, but things that sort of concern me with sort of the larger corporations in all different sectors is sort of the old cash for questions and the lobbying and the power they have over different political puppets. Only time will tell.
Yeah, I think that is a sort of a perfect way to round up the podcast. I'll ask you the final question that we ask all of our guests, and that is, what does the future hold for you?
What does the future hold for me? Well, I took a decision back in March to sort of take things a bit easier, so I don't work full time anymore. Some people are calling it semi-retirement. Other people says you can't do that. Quite a few friends, you're a workaholic. Because my idea of semi-retirement is probably working full time over 3 days, more hours than most people work 5 days a week. I think the main thing is a bit of self-care, a bit of looking after myself. Trying to do what most 40-somethings are trying to do, which is lose a few pounds, be fit and healthy. As soon as I can travel again, I want to get back on a plane and go and visit some more of this fantastic world that we're on. Generally, I ask myself a question: if it's work-related, am I going to have fun? So I'm really enjoying something I'm doing at the moment, which is working on a project called Paradise Gardens, which is the event you mentioned at the beginning. It's in September. Shameless plug. And it's sort of a fantastic 3-day event where we're going to combine loads of your favorite brands and music artists with everybody you've ever wanted to meet in the hydroponics and gardening world, in a big sort of mashup in a huge big site over in Norfolk. So yeah, do have a look at Paradise Gardens online. Tickets still available. If you want a discount, can I give a discount code, Simpa?
Of course.
You can indeed.
Yeah, it's Fox, F-O-X, my name, 20. Gets you 20% straight off the bat off any of the tickets, whether you want to come for one day or the whole weekend. I'd say come for the whole weekend, I think, if you can.
It's going to be worth it, folks. We're going to be there all weekend. You're going to want to come hang out with me and
Of course you are. You're going to be there, forgetting we've invited you. You're coming to hang out, create a base. I think for the future, for me, what I'll probably be doing work-wise is just getting offers all over the place, really, of work. I'll be trying to sort of get more opportunities, I think, in the emerging sort of legal side on the cannabis front. I generally just pick a few brands, I think, that I'd like to work with. I've sort of been there, done that, worked for sort of, big Fortune 500 companies, been directors of larger companies, but I just quite like having a lot of fun at the moment. And meeting people, helping people, travel, more walks with this one who's fallen asleep. Here he is. Milo Dog has joined me all through this podcast. You fell asleep, didn't you, after the first hour?
He's adorable, man.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think going back to sort of like the whole lockdown scenario, I think for me, I kind of already knew what the important things were in life, and it's like the very basics, like having some food in your fridge, your nearest and dearest, friends, neighbours, shelter, making a difference, and just general happiness. So for me, future would be travel, enjoyment, good food, fun, try not to get any fatter. And yeah, a bit of work in the mix there, but trying to keep work possibly to sort of 3 or 4 days, not 5 or 6 days. Loving those long weekends.
Yeah, so that sounds like great aspirations, and I wish you the best of luck with them, brother. I truly do. Look forward to seeing you at Paradise Gardens as well. We'll share links below for people to get tickets.
Thanks, Simpa, and thanks for having me on your podcast. It's been a pleasure.
It has indeed, brother. It has indeed. Thank you very much for listening, folks. If you've enjoyed this, do check us out on patreon.com/Simpa Life, where for a couple of quid a week or a month, it's a month and not a week, you can help keep the lights on this little project and help us fund Paradise Gardens and Product Earth as well, that we'll be attending this year. Do check us out on all social media platforms at Simpa Life. I've been Simpa. This wonderful guest has been James. And we have had Macca, of course, in the corner clicking away. Peace and love, folks. We'll see you next week.
Adios.